One of the most frequently asked questions here on Study with Sudhir is when will the date sheet come and whether we will get a sufficient gap between two examinations as far as ICSE class 10 and ISC class 12 exams are concerned. Now, I can tell you from what evidence is available in the last 2 years, 2019 and 2020, that the ICSE class 10 and ISC class 12 exams both are reasonably well spaced out, which means you get a reasonably good gap between two papers. Because remember, unlike the CBSE class 10, ICSE class 10 has about 10 papers, that is double the number of papers that students need to give compared to your counterparts in the CBSE stream. And this entire examination schedule is usually spread out over 30 days. Let's take, for example, what happened in 2020. 2020, the exam started on the 27th of February and would have ended on the 30th of March 2020. But of course, the COVID-19 pandemic forced the date sheet to retired herd. In 2019, the exam started on the 22nd of February and ended on the 25th of March. So approximately what? 32 to 33 days is what the entire stretch is. So if you divide it by 10 days, you get approximately 3 to 4 days gap on an average between two papers. But in reality, that's not quite the case. See, the conduct of the papers in 2021 depends on two important factors and you need to be mindful of that. One, of course, is the availability of many more school classrooms, given the fact that social distancing will need to be maintained, which means the number of students in a particular classroom will have to be considerably reduced in 2021 compared to what was the case in 2019 and 2020. Added to this is the availability of so many trained invigilators also. So the schools will need to provide for both these infrastructure and the manpower, woman power as far as invigilators are concerned. Now, coming to the topic of this gap between two papers, well, the past experience has not been really very great. I remember in 2019, there was no gap at all before the Hindi examination. The English literature examination ended on a day and the Hindi exam was the next day. So students did not even get sufficient time to revise the entire syllabus even once. On the other hand, in the same year 2019, the computer application students, those who had opted for computer applications as their optional subject, got 1 week gap between the 11th of March and the 18th of March to prepare for the computer applications exam. So in that sense, it is not very scientifically done, and the way it is managed, most often, at least for one paper, you end up getting very little gap and too much gap for another paper, depending on the permutations and combinations of various papers that are involved. Now, I personally think that the council should aim at giving at least 3 days gap between two papers, because that gives you sufficient time to do a good solid revision before the examinations, and if students have been well prepared right at the beginning, they can even squeeze in 2 revisions. So that would be absolutely ideal. Also, the other fact is the longer the exam schedule goes. Suppose, like for example I was mentioning about the week gap between the computer applications exam, your momentum actually gets lost because you think, oh, 1 week is there, I can afford to relax for the first 2 to 3 days. So because examination is almost like a marathon, you need to run at a speed which is like continuous. You cannot kind of go fast, go slow. Marathon running is not like a 100-meter or a 200-meter dash, right? It is like a Cheteshwar Pujara innings. You need to be playing with the same intensity throughout. So a week's gap actually drops the intensity, drops the momentum to an extent. So that I don't think is very advisable from a student's point of view. Though on the face of it, you would think, oh, 1 week gap is there, I don't need to study at all, I'll do the other subject, this I will do in the 1 week. That, according to me, is not a very great strategy to adopt. Okay, now also another fact that you need to remember is that your examinations are most likely to be conducted in the peak summer months, in the months of May and to an extent June 2021 as well. So studying at that time won't really give you the best feeling. I'm sure you agree with that. So it's best that you use the present months of February, March and April to revise, study everything and be very, very thorough with the entire syllabus, so that during the month of May, whenever your exams are held, you are only left with doing a quick last minute revision of the entire syllabus in the gap between two papers. Do not use that time to do some heavy lifting. And when I say heavy lifting, I mean, don't kind of say that, okay, I will study the entire, there is a week's gap before the chemistry exam, so chemistry, I will leave it for that. Please do not make that mistake in your own best interest. Okay, so I just wanted to tell you this about the whole funda about the gap between the two examinations, right? Thank you very much for watching.